Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 17th of March of 2026. Today we have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Ukraine. We received lots of very important updates. According to information we have, the European Union managed to convince the President of Ukraine Zelensky to allow the Hungarians to receive oil via Druzhba pipeline. The European Union has reached an agreement with Ukraine on funding and technical assistance for repairs to the Druzhba pipeline to allow Russian oil to flow to Hungary and Slovakia. Hungary is demanding the Druzhba pipeline be reopened in order to secure European Union funds for Ukraine and impose sanctions against Russia. Zelensky stated that the repairs would take a month and a half. So you know that this is a very important situation, but as we can see, the Europeans and Zelensky himself are trying to trick and outsmart the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, because according to information we have, the parliament elections in Hungary will take place within a month, and according to the article we just read, the Ukrainians are going to reopen the Druzhba pipeline in a month and a half, which means that the Hungarian Prime Minister will not be able to force Zelensky to reopen the pipeline before the election starts. So this is the game in Europe. Another important thing is that today Zelensky arrived in the United Kingdom. He arrived in London, and at the airport he was met by Zaluzhny, the ambassador, and the pilot of his own plane. As of now, very difficult to understand why Zelensky arrived in London, but most likely he's going to talk about money and about energy security. Now let's return back to Ukraine and let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very important updates. If you remember, just during the previous video, we discussed a lot of statements that were made by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, Valery Gerasimov. He was saying that the Russians began their major spring offensive operation, and during the previous 24 hours, according to his statements and later according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly. So let's start and let's first discuss the situation in the Zaporozhye region, where the city of Orekhov is the first and the primary task of Russians. As you can see, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos from this area. Here we have lots of updates of how Russians were attacking positions and reinforcements of the armed forces of Ukraine that were moving through the entire Zaporozhye direction, just with the purpose to reinforce their positions along the line of combat contact. The Russians launched their major Zaporozhye offensive operation, and now everybody understands that the siege of Zaporozhye is the primary task for the Russian forces for the next 6 months, and we'll see whether the Russians are able to improve their positions or not. As for the eastern Zaporozhye direction, the Russians currently are focused to establish complete control over the villages of Vozdvizhivka and Verkhnya Tersa, but as you can see, during the previous 24 hours, despite the talks, statements and rumors that were published by pro-Russian sources, we haven't received anything. From the other side, we received lots of updates from the northern Zaporozhye direction, where the Ukrainians are keeping counter-offensive operation in the direction of the city by the name of Uspenovka. This is a very important settlement because this settlement is located along the main supply line that the Russians use to support their contingent on the territory of the city of Gulyai-Polya. And the Ukrainians are approaching this line, and the Russians are about to cut physically this line from at least 2 directions. As you can see, the map has been adjusted in this area, and the map has been adjusted based on the reports and videos that were published by pro-Russian sources. For example, in this video we can see how Russians were attacking edge positions of the armed forces of the Russian Ukraine on the territory of Novo-Nikolaevka. And the Russians were attacking this building that was geolocated later. So this is the building that was attacked by Russians. And a few hours later, we received another video from the area of the settlement of Nova Ivanovka. And here we can see how a Ukrainian soldier was moving towards this settlement, probably when his convoy was attacked by Russian forces. So as for this geolocation, as for this point, the distance between the Ukrainian soldier that we've just seen, and the settlement itself is already less than 2 kilometers. So the Ukrainians are breaking through in the direction of Nova Ivanovka. It seems that there are Russian positions between these two pincers. The Russians are holding their lines in this area, but from the other side we see that the Ukrainians are trying to encircle this pocket from the west and from the east, and the Ukrainians have approached the settlement of Nova Ivanovka and the settlement of Uspenovka. So let's wait and see, of course, what is going to be next, but obviously there is a very critical situation. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Dobropolye direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received just a small update. We're talking about the most northwestern part of the settlement of Grishna. Pro-Russian sources stated that the Russians established complete control over the territory of the village and that Ukrainians were forced to fall back further in the northwestern direction. So according to geolocations, according to different pro-Russian sources, according to many updates, the settlement of Grishna has been already captured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation, but yet the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation haven't confirmed this information. So we believe that in coming days we will receive this confirmation, and the Russians will be able to keep advancing further, this time most likely in the northwestern direction, with the purpose to outflank the settlement of Sergeyevka and to attack the Ukrainian positions from behind. Now let's discuss the situation in the city of Konstantinovka. As for this area, the situation is critical and very complicated. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, Valery Gerasimov, stated yesterday that the Russians captured up to 60% of the city of Konstantinovka, but when talking about our map and when talking about any other map that you can find in the internet, we will not see this 60% of control of Russian forces. It looks like the Russians control around 15%, but not more. Of course, we are not saying that the Russians haven't established control for more than 60%, but I'm just trying to tell you that neither pro-Russian sources nor pro-Ukrainian sources still haven't published even a single video that can confirm Russian control over these territories. So, the fact is that if the Russians reported about such a control over the settlement, we believe that in coming days the Russians would be forced to publish proofs. Now let's talk about the most important direction, the Slavians direction. This is the most important because the biggest changes and the most important changes of the ground are coming from this area. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of updates from the area of the triangle between the villages of Grigorovka, Kaleniki and Riznikovka. This is the way how the map has been adjusted since the beginning of the 15th of March of 2026. The Russians, as you can see, improved their position significantly, and this information was confirmed both by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation and by several videos that were published from this area. For example, in this video we can see how Russians were attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine along this tree line. So the clashes were taking place in this area, and basically the Russians were checking whether there are Ukrainian forces through this tree line or not. So based on the video, based on the report, we have adjusted the map, and we can see that the Russians are approaching the city of Frya Alexandrovka, the most important defense belt of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Slavians direction. If Ukrainians lose control over the settlement of Frya Alexandrovka, this is going to be a turning point in the battle for the heart of the Donbas Arc operation that was started basically in 2022. So the Russians are entering the final phase of the battle for the Eastern Slavians direction, and we believe that somewhere before May of 2026 we will see a completely different picture in this area. Furthermore, the Russians stated that they are finishing the battle for the settlement of Kriva Luka, which is located along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal through these mountains, through these strategical elevations. Another important thing is the city of Liman. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation also stated, and the Commander-in-Chief, that around 60% of the settlement have already fallen in Russia's hands, but yet we haven't received anything that can confirm this. Another important thing that we believe that if this information was announced, this means that in coming days we will see changes. And another important area is the northern direction. During the previous 24 hours, the map has been adjusted in this area as well. According to the Minister of Defense and according to the Group of Forces North, the Russians established complete control over the settlement by the name of Sopich. This information first was provided by the Group of Forces North, and I would like to remind you that the Russians launched the Northern Sumy offensive operation just probably with one purpose: in time to establish complete control over the territory, and this will allow the Russians to force the Ukrainians to move their launching sites from the northeastern parts of Ukraine towards the city of Nizhyn, maybe Konotop, or maybe even the city of Kiev, because the Ukrainians are using this launching site more often to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. And for example, during the previous days, the Russians were attacked with a significant number of drones launched by Ukrainians. More than 500 or around 500 drones the Ukrainians used just during the previous 24 hours, and during the previous 3 hours the Ukrainians used around 1,000 drones to attack the territory of Moscow. And you know that maybe this is the reason why the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, came today to London. Maybe he came to London to receive personal agreement or to be allowed to attack Russia with cruise missiles of the United Kingdom production. Who knows? Because obviously, if Zelensky decides to attack Moscow with cruise missiles, most likely he will be forced to use technologies or missiles that were partially produced with the help of Western countries. And as of now, we have just one state that can help Ukrainians with this, and we are talking, of course, about the United Kingdom, and with their Storm Shadow missiles. I would like to remind you that several days ago they attacked the city of Bryansk, dealing significant damage to a very important military plant. So maybe now Zelensky came to United Kingdom to ask permission to do this once again, but this time with the city of Moscow. And of course, if this happens, this is going to be the biggest escalation since the beginning of the special military operation. If Ukraine begins attacking the territory of the capital of the Russian Federation with the cruise missiles of the Western production, this is going to be the biggest disaster. And obviously, if this attack happens, I believe that we will not see or talk about the negotiation process for the next 6 or even more months. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Middle East, where the conflict from one side continues escalating, but from the other side we start receiving less and less updates when talking about the mutual strikes. The most important problem, or the most important update of the previous 24 hours is probably the report that the Israelis managed to assassinate the secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani. He was attacked during the previous 48 hours with aviation, most likely, and this is obviously a very powerful attack on Iranian political structure, because this person played significant role in the command control of the state. And as the Israeli authorities stated before, the main purpose from their side right now is to eliminate the top authorities of the Iranians, of the Iranian political forces, with the purpose to allow the civilians to take the power in Iran in their hands. So currently there are two options in front of the coalitions. The first one, to start the ground operation in the area of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, with the purpose to secure the Strait of Hormuz and to restore the balance in the oil market, but from the other side to continue attacking the Iranian authorities with the purpose to allow people to take the power in their hands. So there are two options, and as we can see, the coalition is moving using both ways. But as for the previous 24 hours, we see that the United States of America received some problems, especially these problems concerns the U.S. aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford. A fire aboard on the U.S. aircraft carrier Ford burned for over 30 hours, displacing more than 60 sailors and injuring at least 2. This information was provided by different media, and this situation forced the United States of America to redeploy this, or to begin the redeployment of this aircraft carrier in the northern direction towards the Crete, with the purpose probably to make some repairments from something like this. Furthermore, we still haven't received anything about the participation of the French aircraft carrier, and it seems that the French aircraft carrier is moving in the direction of the Middle East, but it seems that this aircraft carrier is not going to take part in this conflict, especially will not take part in the operation of unblocking the Persian Gulf. As for the Persian Gulf itself and the Strait of Hormuz, we see that this territory continues being completely blocked by the Iranians. During the previous 24 hours, we received additional videos where we can see how the vessels and tankers were moving through this area, which means that some tankers have the possibilities and the right to cross this area. And another important thing is that during the previous 24 hours, the Iranians, according to information we have, attacked for the first time the tanker that was located and sailing around the city of Fujairah, and this area doesn't have any connection and not anything common, let's say, with the Strait of Hormuz, which means that the Iranians is expanding the geography of their strikes, and obviously their task not just to block the Strait of Hormuz, but their task to block the export of the Persian Gulf states like United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and maybe even Iraq. But as for the state of Iraq, we know that there have some negotiation process behind the scenes with the Iranians to find a mechanism how Iran will allow the Iraq to sell oil using this Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, which means that most likely these two states will be able to normalize the relations between them. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.